Ever since the Canestraro files have been released, I was hoping that it would bring about the right attention from the right people. And so far, it's brought about the wrong attention by the wrong people on the general face of it. It's good that people like Whitney Webb and Gray Zone have covered it, but so have Richard Gage and these right wing uh, fanatics who have spread these dumb, no plane theories and stuff have been all over the story and just really have been quite, it's been quite a detriment to the latest remarkable revelations. And it's a shame. And in one instance, what we're going to be talking about is a person by the name of Mindy Robinson, who's a reality TV personality and is known for appearing on shows like Millionaire Matchmaker, um, VHS 1, 2, and the company, The Bet. She's also the girlfriend of former UFC heavyweight and light heavyweight champion Randy Couture, and she ran as the Republican primary for Nevada's 3rd Congressional District in 2020. But she supports a lot of these like fanatic right-wing conspiracy theories, such as QAnon, the Stoneman Douglas High School shooting, um, the Clinton body count, which, the Las Vegas shooting, and now it seems 9/11. So to show you what I'm talking about, I'm going to share a Twitter screenshot here, and we're going to read this together. As you can see, this is from Mindy Robinson. And it says 9/11 was orchestrated by 3 entities, including the Saudis who provided the terrorists and the major cover story. Right off the bat, she's saying it as a known fact. Now, what we do know is that the CIA and Saudis were indeed withholding information from the FBI and the State Department. But what she's assuming here is the key words: 9/11 was orchestrated by 3 entities. And she provides the 3 entities below. 1, by Mossad, who provided the Israeli agents that got caught with a van full of explosives and an empty van full of explosive residue the day of, as well as were filming and laughing before the first plane hit, which is how they got caught, only to be handed back to Israel without question. They had access to the buildings for a whole month prior using a fake Mossad company and rigged the 2 towers in Building 7 to guarantee they would fall. Building 7 was never hit by a plane, was 2 buildings away from the tower, and housed a lot of the government's clandestine paperwork like Kissinger's Safari Club and his global CIA money laundering enterprises, etc. Wow. A whole lot in this very first paragraph, right? And just about everything she said here is plain out false. And a lot of it is irrational speculation. And I'm going to break it down completely here. 1, the Mossad, Israeli intelligence, provided the Israeli agents. In other words, she has information that would not be accessible to any public servant, much less a former reality celebrity, that the Mossad definitely provided the Israeli agents that got caught with a van full of explosives and an empty van full of explosive residue the day of. Well, for one, there was no van full of explosives. And if you're going to be talking about the George Washington Bridge, this is debunked. All right. So 2 reporters, Dan Rather and Marcia Kramer, came out and said that they had third-hand accounts that there was a van full of explosives. Now, all throughout the day on 9/11, you had God knows how many hundreds and hundreds of false reports that were happening all over the place. One of them was a panel truck exploded near King Street. Yet the Wall Street Journal would write a report that there was a panel truck parked on King Street, but it didn't explode. That they towed it and they brought it back. Another one was a van was driving around with spray paint or painted on this truck, the World Trade Center being attacked by a plane. That too was false. So there was a report that there was a van full of explosives found near the George Washington Bridge. This was false. Now, my co-researcher, DJ Thorodenir, did an entire film, which I'm going to link at the bottom of the description, called George Washington Bridge. The incident at George Washington Bridge, I think that's the name. I'm getting it wrong. But he did a whole film based on this. And it's the best film out there in the country regarding this one specific story and how it got misconstrued by the media. In fact, after September 11th, you never heard about this anymore. It was a false report. That's why. However, there was an FBI report in the FBI redacted report that the truck that was driven by Sivan Kurzberg that was pulled over on East Rutherford tested for bomb residue. Now, what kind of bomb residue? Don't know. Truck only had blankets, didn't have tools or nothing. It was an empty truck. Urban Moving Systems truck. In the FBI report, I wrote a long article about this. And basically, they brought in these bomb-sniffing dogs, and it was positive because they reacted to the blanket. However, that doesn't mean that these guys basically put bombs or type of explosives in the World Trade Center. If they are guilty, they're guilty of driving a truck that had tested positive for residue. That doesn't mean they did it. Nobody knows who did it. And we don't know where that bomb residue came from. Did it come from the World Trade Center? Did it come from somewhere else? Was the bombs tested somewhere else and they used a blanket? Somebody's speculation here, but she's saying it as a matter of fact. And that's just wrong. But she did get that part a little bit right. As well as filming and laughing before the first plane hit, which is how they got caught. False. They were filmed laughing after the first plane was hit. Now, in the same redacted FBI report regarding dancing Israelis, there were two people at Doric Towers. The Doric Towers is a large condominium that's located in Jersey City, and has basically, it's a big building and has a garage at the bottom and has a clear view of downtown Manhattan. There was a woman there named Maria, and she got a call from her friend saying, go look outside to the World Trade Center. She did. She brought out her binoculars because she's an older woman, and she used her binoculars to see what was happening. And she looked down because she heard something, and she saw a bunch of young men celebrating the attacks. It turned out to be that these were the dancing Israelis, that the media called them, or the high fivers, is what the FBI calls them. And they happened to be Sivan Kurzberg, Odin Elner, Yaron Schmel, and later on, when they got caught, Paul Kurzberg and Omar Mamert, right? There was 5 that got arrested, but 3 were seen celebrating. But they weren't celebrating before the first plane hit. Now, like I said, in that FBI redacted report, the FBI went to Doric Towers and interviewed 2 residents there, whose name is redacted for privacy, right? But they said that they saw a white truck, didn't say urban moving systems on it, but they saw a white truck similar to the white truck that the 3 Israelis were seen celebrating near, that they drove. And they said that that truck was there at 8 a.m. Was it the same truck? Maybe. Don't know. Maybe it was a different truck. But Mindy is wrong here because she's stating that they were celebrating before the first plane hit. That's wrong because the first plane was hit and Maria was told about the hit. And then she came to the window and she used the binoculars, saw them celebrating. And how they got only to be handed back to Israel without question. Actually, they were detained by the FBI for 71 days and then pressured to be released. The FBI didn't want to release them either because they thought that they knew more than what they were telling them. And I have to agree with that. There was a large-scale Israeli foreign intelligence ring. In fact, there were two. One was using moving companies in Florida, New Jersey, and New York. The other one was the art student, which is the bigger ring. That's Southwest United States and Northeast the United States. They had access to the buildings for a whole month prior using a fake Mossad company and rigged the two towers in Building 7 to guarantee they would fall. Wow. I've heard this before, but man, all this is false. Now, I'm going to assume, because she's not detailed here, not specific, I'm going to assume she's saying that Gelatin B, which is an art company based out of Austria, Germany, was the company. Now, I don't know how many times I addressed this. First of all, this is not the art student ring that people assume was, because there was this group called Gelatin B, which were, this kooky looking art company that basically used the World Trade Center on those floors up, I think was 85 or 81 to 83 or something like that, took out the windows and helicopters are coming in taking pictures of people at the windows and just a bunch of really unusual stuff, right? But if you look up the company, Gelatin B, they're not even Israeli. They're from Austria. Now, there have been, and I'm not going to name them, there have been these fringe 9/11 truthers that have basically said that this was the art student ring that was involved with planting explosives because in the book, Gelatin, they're seen, with these cardboard cutouts and the one person said, oh, the BB-88s are the fuse boxes and they're setting up. First of all, let's talk about the obvious. If you're wiring up a building for explosives, would you want to be filmed doing it? This is not how this works, right? I'm sorry, that's not how this works. The BB-88 were from a company called Little Fuse, and they were stripped power bars because those floors were going under construction. In fact, one person who worked at the World Trade Center, Scott Forbes, would complain that he would work in the evening hours and hear construction going on in those empty floors. They were not a Mossad company. I don't know where you got that from. Gelatin B is an art company from Austria. They even did a video, it's on YouTube, talking about what they did on September 11th. I mean, what they did in the months that they were there. They're not even Jewish. So all that is wrong. Blaming Israel for wiring up the World Trade Center with no evidence whatsoever. It's irresponsible. Building 7 was never hit by a plane. It was 2 buildings away from the tower and housed a lot of the government's clandestine paperwork, like the Safari Club and global CIA money laundering enterprises. It was hit by debris from World Trade Centers 1 and 2. Whether it came down by explosives or not, I can't argue that because I'm not an engineer. So my opinion is invalid. There are reputable people who work in the scientific community who claim that World Trade Center did come down from explosives. So I don't argue against. My opinion is that they did. But like I said, my opinion is not without any expertise, so don't respect it at all. Engage with the people who are much more qualified than me to talk about that. But World Trade Center 7 was hit by debris from World Trade Center 1 and 2. I interviewed a fire chief, Richard Rotans, on my show. He was in World Trade Center 7. There was noticeable damage on the south side of the building. I don't know what to tell you. Okay. Let's blow this up a little bit. The CIA suppressed evidence and controlled the media to cover up holes in their story, like the pristine terrorist passport found on the ground, so they could hide the trillions the Pentagon lost the day before and push the unconstitutional Patriot Act to spy Americans for blackmail. And so the military-industrial complex had started a war in the Middle East for profit and power with terrorists. The CIA actually trained by blaming bin Laden, who they also trained. They also wanted to destroy Iraq to install the Federal Reserve central banking system. There's a whole lot here. Goodness gracious. Let's start off with the CIA suppressed evidence to control the media to cover up holes in their story. Pretty vague, but I can't disagree with certain things because the latest revelations from the Canestraro files prove that. The FBI's Operation Encore files prove that. The CIA suppressed evidence and controlled the evidence from the FBI and the State Department regarding 2 hijackers living inside the United States, Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, who they knew were coming inside the United States and who they also knew were coming from a high-level al-Qaeda meeting in Malaysia, in which they were seen meeting with the alleged mastermind of the USS Cole bombing, Tawfiq bin Attash, also known as Khalid, which would make it a criminal investigation by the FBI had they been told that al-Mihdhar and al-Hazmi were coming to the United States because they both had U.S. visas. The CIA hid this information intentionally from the FBI and the White House and the principals' meetings until August of 2001, but by then it was too late. The pristine terrorist passport found on the ground. Actually, it wasn't so pristine, and it's not so unique. The passport was actually recovered by NYPD detective Yuk H. Chin, which the passport was found by a male passerby and given to Chin, who then gave it to the FBI. And the North Tower then collapsed after this. Now, this is in the 9/11 Commission report. But I know what you're talking about because your claim is that the claim indicated that it's quite impossible for a passport could still be intact after the destruction of Flight 11's impact into the North Tower. But if you don't understand how paper could survive an explosion, let me give you an example. Because it's not so, it is not so unique, right? So let's talk about this New York Times article. One Letter's Odyssey helped mend the wound. On September 10th, Donna Snyder dropped a letter into the mail. The plain white envelope was addressed to the Alargo Vacation Club in Irvine, California, and it contained a check for $170, the monthly payment for Ms. Snyder's upcoming winter trip to Aruba. Having mailed it, she forgot about it until she got it back. On October 12th, it arrived inside a second envelope at Ms. Snyder's modest white house on Main Street. And the instant she took it out and saw it, she said, chills went over me. It was singed and crumpled. A chunk was ripped out, giving the bottom of the envelope she had sent the look of a jagged skyline. Now, read this here. When Ms. Snyder received the letter, She took it to the post office here in Rochester, a city about 26,000 in southeastern New Hampshire. She was told that mail bound for Southern California from Rochester went first to a postal center in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, then was put on the plane at Logan International Airport. The two planes then crashed into the World Trade Center and left Logan bound for Los Angeles. The letter was on American Airlines 11 because, as you could see here, the letters, in fact, World Trade Center, American Airlines 11 was carrying 10,000 pounds of mail, just like Flight 93 was carrying, I think, 27,000 pounds of mail or something like that. Why does the passport get a criticism from you, Mindy, but this letter, which is lighter than the passport, does not? I think we know why. So they could hide the trillions the Pentagon lost the day before. Now, I've heard this before too. Donald Rumsfeld is at some promenade, military promenade, and he talks about the audit that the Pentagon went through, and he claims, and he makes a statement that they can't account for $2.3 trillion. I've heard this ad nauseum over the years. But there's an explanation for that too. Because it wasn't just announced on September 10th, 2001. This is from Associated Press, John Donnelly. As you can see here, May 4th, 2000. Pentagon's finances in disarray. The Pentagon could not show receipts for $2.3 trillion of those charges and $500 billion of its corrections of mistakes made in earlier adjustments. Each adjustment represents the Defense Department's accountant's attempt to correct the discrepancy. The military has hundreds of computer systems to run accounts as diverse as healthcare, payroll, and inventory, but they are not integrated, meaning that these are separate computers running separate accounts from money accounts. Don't produce numbers up for accounting standards and fail to keep running totals of what's coming in and what's going out, Pentagon and congressional officials said. So, as you can see here, written March 4th of 2000, that says March 4th of 2000. That's a year and some months, probably a year and a half before the 9/11 attacks. And the money wasn't missing. So the military-industrial complex could start a war in the Middle East for profit and power with terrorists. The CIA actually trained by blaming bin Laden, who they also trained. Some truth and some falsehoods. What's true about this is that, yes, the military-industrial complex started numerous wars in the Middle East on behalf of fighting the war on terror. Actually, we funded terrorists in 1979, 1980 through Operation Cyclone. It went not directly to terrorists, but it went through the Pakistan ISI because Arabs would not deal with the West or non-government organizations. The CIA knew this and gave weapons aid and military training and money through the Pakistan ISI, who gave it to Afghan warlords like Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, Jalaluddin Haqqani, who later became the leader of the Haqqani network, was an offshoot of the Taliban, Abdul Rasul Saab, the three most powerful warlords in all Afghanistan at the time. But they're also the three of the most brutal because they also allowed Arabs to fight along with the Afghans. Afghans didn't like Arabs for religious discrepancy reasons, and Afghans were notably much better fighters than Arabs. Foreign Arabs were not very good fighters. Afghans had centuries of experience. They didn't call Afghanistan the graveyard of empires for nothing, you know. So this very vague response, this sentence here about the terrorists and CIA actually trained, in which they trained bin Laden. No, the CIA never trained bin Laden. There's no evidence for this whatsoever. Now, I've said this before, that the second emir to Al Qaeda, Dr. Ayman al Zawahiri, wrote a memoir called Knights Under the Prophet's Banner, where he addressed this claim over the years that bin Laden received funding, direct funding, or training from the West, and said, no, he did not. That's not me saying it. That's Al Qaeda, unless you're willing to say, you know, yeah, they're all CIA, or they're, you know, he's in on it too. He never trained bin Laden. Now, was there a trickle-down effect where the Pakistan ISI trained these people, and later on these Arabs that started coming into the war later on received this training? Sure did. Ramzi Youssef was one. Mahmoud Abilene was another. But Muhammad Atta and Ziad Jar, they're too young. They weren't involved with that. Neither was Khalid al-Mihdhar or Nawab Bahadri. They came through the Balkans. They left their homes in Yemen and went to fight against the Soviets in Chechnya. So none of the 9/11 hijackers were involved with the training of Operation Cyclone. They also wanted to destroy Iraq to install the Federal Reserve central banking system. Interesting note about this. So I understand where she's coming from here, because of the simple fact that after the 2003 invasion of Iraq, the United States Department of Defense controlled the country's foreign currency. Even though Iraq has their own money, the dinar, but the Iraq's foreign currency reserves are housed at the United States Federal Reserve, which gives the United States significant control over Iraq's supply of dollars. Now, what this does is that because the dinar is so devalued, the United States, who controls Iraq's oil, buys the oil, supplies them with US dollars. And what they basically do is that every month or so, from a Federal Reserve compound in East Rutherford, New Jersey, is that they'll load a truck with like 10 tons of US dollars, totaling about to like $1 billion or $2 billion, ship it off to an Air Force base, which then goes to Baghdad, because it belongs to the Iraq government, which routes the proceeds of its oil sales through an account at the Federal Reserve. So there's some truth to that statement, but it's not how she words it. You get what I'm saying? So that was one page. Let's go to the second page here, right? So I'm going to lower myself. I didn't believe 9/11 was an inside job either until I did my own research. You looked at information that agreed with your worldview. If you were doing unbiased research, you wouldn't have made those mistakes in that tweet. Average Americans need to know about the atrocity the feds committed on us. You're implying that it was 9/11 is orchestrated by the federal government. Another irresponsible tweet or statement. 3,000 dead, plus however many troops were lost fighting so the central banks and war pigs in D.C. could profit. I can't disagree regarding the military response. A lot of people died in Iraq and Afghanistan, more so in Iraq. And to me, that's a war crime. Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. It's why they didn't care how they pulled out of Afghanistan. They were setting up to start another contrived war in Ukraine to keep these forever wars going. There's a lot of truth in that. A whole lot of truth in that. So I can't disagree with that. Our government was behind 9/11 with the help of two supposed allies. That is a bold statement, and it's not proven by anything. And you should be held accountable, right? Because you claim to be an independent journalist. You also claim to be a libertarian. But you have strong right-wing leanings when it comes to politics. You love to criticize the Democratic Party. You love to criticize the leftists, but you'll barely criticize the Republicans. I've seen this with certain libertarians too. They're making a big mistake by doing this because they so much disagree with domestic policies and domestic culture from the left that they would rather agree with the right regarding these issues. And I think it's a big mistake. They would have never gotten away with it if social media was more of a thing back then. It would have been worse. Look at all the fringe conspiracies that arose between 2004 to now. Can you imagine with 9/11 how many false reports there would have been? It would have been through the roof. In fact, during September of 2001 to about, say, September of 2002, we had a bunch of great reporting before the advent of the internet really took off. People like Paul Thompson and Kevin Fenton, John Gold, right? Those people that came out early, Kyle Hentz, real doggone experts in their field of 9/11. When the advent of the internet took off, like around 2006, YouTube launched in 2007, more DVDs came out. That was the end. That was the end of those reputable researchers because we were awash in disinformation. We were awash with the lunacy, the fringes of the truth movement started coming. And that's what destroyed the 9/11 truth movement. No planes, no hijackers, CGI, nuclear weapons in the World Trade Center, a missile hitting the Pentagon, no plane crash in Shanksville. That was it. Nobody was talking about CIA involvement with the Saudis regarding two hijackers inside the United States and withholding information from the FBI. There was no deep investigation into the real art student ring of the Southwest, Northeast, using moving companies and an art student ring to obtain intelligence regarding the 9/11 hijackers and the associates of those people? No, all that was replaced, blanketed, shielded by the fringe lunatics who spread the no hijackers, no planes, because if there are no planes, no hijackers, you're not looking into the profiles and background of the hijackers, which involve the intelligence services, foreign and domestic. End of story. You just proved it in this tweet, Mindy. We never get answers to the holes in the government stories about the Las Vegas shooting. Really? Or Uvalde, or any of them. I see where you're coming from. Every mass shooting is about taking away the guns. How many mass shootings have there been between now and the last 10 years? Over 500. Actually, I think it's about 368. I think it was about 368 mass shootings. Every mass shooting, according to the fringe right-wing extremists, is the government controlling the shooter, or somehow there's more shooters in the hopes of revoking the Second Amendment, which is ridiculous by its nature. They just try to medically genocide us with this vaccine and cover it up. I'm going to pass. 3,000 dead Americans to hide trillions of dollars and keep the war machine going is nothing to these monsters. Americans need to wake up to how evil our government is and actually do something about it. I'm with the final statement. And I think that's the best sentence in this whole tweet. I'm with you there. I'm anti-government. I'm against, I don't vote. I don't support left or right policies. There's no such thing as a Democratic Republican Party. Never was. There's only a left and right when it comes to domestic issues. The reason why they keep you divided, it's working. And Mindy doesn't realize that she's doing just that. You think you're doing a service by providing information which helps to wake up people, but you are actually providing speculation, innuendo, and falsehoods all in one tweet, which basically hinder people from being knowledgeable. What you want to do in the future, Mindy Robinson, is that you want to provide actual information which helps educate the public, no matter who it is. Whether it's people that support a right-wing ideology, a left-wing ideology, an independent ideology, a libertine ideology, because what you want is to break all those walls, get people out of this sexism, racism, politics, religiosity, get them all out of these walls, these divisive venues, and basically break through them. Because that's what the government fears, a united people. Because then we'll hold the government responsible for creating these venues in the first place, or facilitating them, to make sure that we are the enemy. But you're not doing anybody a service by providing false information and then saying that you're a patriot, or that you're, acting as a libertarian because you want to overthrow the government or replace the government or get the people to replace. Well, you can't create a movement of disinformed people. Because let's just say if we went to court with half of the stuff you report in this tweet, it's called a frivolous lawsuit. Because most of the information you provided is false. Therefore, in the end, you created a disservice for the public that you're trying to educate. And it makes it harder for people like me who are trying to educate the public to create a movement that can do something. I don't want a paralyzed public. I want a public that can actually act. And if you want to wake up the public to show how evil the government is, you have to provide information that is not divisive, that is not based on conjecture or innuendo or speculation. We have to have information that's tangible, and that we can work on, and that they can't refute, and they can't deny us real justice.